Right. So firstly, I would like to say thank you for joining us on this career opportunities in fintech. And Sunur is joined us from India. So thank you, Sunur, for obviously it's quite late Sunday evening. And Neerad is here from the UK. And we've Akshan also, who's shown an interest in understanding what fintech is and what the opportunities lie ahead. So what I'm going to do is, if it would be nice if each of you could give like introduction about yourselves, what you do. So Sunur, should we start with you first?
Sure, fair enough. Well, thank you for having me. In terms of what I do, I'm a founder for a firm called Origo Commodities, mainly focused on making commodities simple. It's primarily focused on agri commodities, so nothing too glamorous. It's focused on wheat, paddy, maize, soybean, imports of oil, etc. Our idea is twofold. One is financing the supply chain of these commodities. So we do trade finance structures, and then the logistics of it, which is essentially warehousing of these commodities. So on the financing of the commodities, we essentially finance the buy and sell of these agri commodities across the domestic parameters, essentially within the country. And we also have some structures for import of oil in the country. The size of our transactions, just for an idea, varies between $100,000 to as high as about 15 million. So each transaction is in that range. And we're doing about 460 crores. So that's about 70 million or so this year. 70 million worth of financing structures this year total. On the warehousing side, we primarily work with the Indian government. We have about 230 or 240 warehouses that we operate. We have about 4 million tons of cargo that we store for the government, which is roughly about 14,000 crores. So roughly about $1.5 billion, almost 2 billion worth of cargo that we stock. So these are the two primary areas. On the fintech piece in particular, that's more focused on our trade finance structures, where we essentially move the financing and the purchase of these commodities on a technology platform. And we make it, essentially, we can go through it in more detail. This model is not for acquisition of client, but more for enablement of the transactions. But that's just a brief about what we do.
Thank you, Neerad. Would you like to also tell us what you do briefly, and then we'll...
Yeah. That's what my daughter keeps asking. What do you really do, Papa? So I work for FIS WorldPay. FIS is now it is the largest kind of fintech in the world, and I've been with them for about a couple of years. I'll come back to FIS, but so my overall background has been mostly banking. So I've been with Citibank for about 11, 12 years. So I started in India. Then I moved to different international locations, US, little bit, Middle East, and eventually UK. I've also worked for a number of other banks. I worked for RBS, has a small private bank called Coots, so I worked for them. I worked for US Bank Corp, which is a Minneapolis-based bank. And I have worked about 4 or 5 years in Middle East for two of the larger banks there, National Bank of Kuwait and Ahli United Bank, based out of Bahrain. So my background has been kind of typical traditional banking to start with, but over a period of time, I've gravitated more and more towards technology. I'm quite a business person, but my product set is becoming more and more technology oriented. And within technology, I've gravitated more towards payments and financial services. As you might know, FIS essentially within the payments, and I can expand it, a little later. There are kind of two realms within payments, and I've kind of covered both the realms, both the domains for the payments, and that's pretty much been my background. But I can expand a little bit more on what the company does, what we do, where I see the opportunities, going forward in next 5-10 years. and so
at
on.
the moment. So fintech, I thought would be really interesting for me, as I've always really loved maths. So the financial part, and then the tech part. So I've started computer science last year, and I'm just really liking it. So I thought, why don't I try a combination of the two? It worked well for me in the past, seeing as how I played the double bass and I played the guitar. So my teachers then threw at me the bass guitar, and I enjoyed it. So I think I'll enjoy this too. Thank you.
Right. So now I think I'm going to hand over to Akshan, and he can fire his questions at you, so to get a better understanding of what fintech is about. Akshan, over to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I'm just going to be asking a few questions, and my first question is, I just want to know how you got into fintech as a sector. So if Mr. Neerad Kaul, you could please start.
Yeah, so let's first understand what fintech is, right? Because sometimes what happens is that a lot of these terms are used loosely, and it may mean different things to different people. So, so finance has been there for long, so has technology been there for long. In my view, fintech is the advent of computer science, and therefore software-driven optimization that has come into every sphere of industry, including financial services. Strangely, it's actually come to financial services as slightly, I would say, it's taken a longer time to come to financial services, because if you go to a bank, you wouldn't think of bank as a very technology forward company, right? You would think of Apple or Google or Facebook or a lot of technology companies, even SAP as kind of technology. Even in manufacturing, there was much more advanced software and technology systems being used before they came to banking. And majority of the banks still, I would tell you, are quite legacy infrastructure driven. So fintech has come into late in finance, but it has now come with a bang. So there is so much opportunity that has opened up, and the reason this opportunity is opened up is twofold. One is that so what has happened is that earlier a bank would do a financial. When I say bank, I mean you could apply to any financial services organization. They would have their own technology department, which would be like a cost center to them, and but the focus would more be on the actual financing, how much margins they are making, who are their clients, what are their market segments, how do they penetrate those market segments. So it was much more business, finance, and risk driven approach. Over a period of time, what they and the technology part was a very cost-driven approach. That okay, it costs me so much to do this, right? What these technology companies essentially have now forced banks to do is to think about their cost structures also as their profit structures. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that earlier, if there were certain divisions which were doing some amount of work, the same amount of work can be done much smarter, much quicker by software optimization, by data modeling. Think of a bank or a financial service company as data companies. Finance is nothing but data, right? So if there's a technology company that helps you monetize that data, understand the data, understand what happens behind that data, it's the kind of market segment that it opens up is tremendous. So that's one. Second is that banks also used to do a lot of things themselves. Let's take a very, very simple process. So you go to a bank and you apply for a loan. I'm giving you the simplest example, right? Earlier, from doing your application processing to know your customer, to do your reference check, to do your bank account check, credit check, and then to assess your risk, and then to give you the loan, and then to manage that loan, and then to meet you when you visit the bank branch. All these steps were done by the bank. Now, what has happened with the advent of fintech is that each of these steps have been broken. And what fintech companies or technology companies who operate in the space do very well is that they specialize in each of these steps. So, for example, if there's a customer onboarding proposition, they would just specialize in customer onboarding. So the customer onboarding experience would be so damn good that the bank would think, oh my God, what I am doing is ridiculous compared to what this company is offering me, and therefore let me work with this company and outsource this part of my value chain to this company. And so these companies are disrupting each individual parts of this value chain. And therefore, now when you even go to even kind of legacy banks, you go to Lloyds or Halifax or in the UK, you will find that a lot of things that they are labeling as Halifax actually not done by Halifax. It's not like earlier where Halifax would have outsourced some portions to some vendor. It's actively each individual kind of brick is taken up by this technology company, is delivered back to the bank under the bank's branding, so that a customer doesn't even know. And this kind of value chain aggregation is happening over the end-to-end process as we move forward. And so what is happening is that financial services companies are they have to force themselves to think like technology companies, because now they're realizing, hang on, I mean, actually, I always dealt with data, right? That's what technology companies tell you. I always dealt with data, but I just did not have the tools or the knowledge base to manage this kind of data, and therefore the kind of paradigm has really shifted. Banks who are doing very well right now, at least if I just give you kind of specific to UK experience, are those are mostly startup banks that are adding millions of customers. All the customers that are coming on the board over the last 2-3 years, 70% of the customer base has been added by banks who have been born in the last 10 years. Not by NatWest, not by Halifax, not by Santander, not even by Citi, right? So there's a big kind of seismic shift that has happened over a period of time, and this opens a lot of opportunities going forward.
Sorry to interject, but I just want to ask. So so you saw an opportunity in the financial market, and that's how you got into fintech.
Personally, in my personal case, it was not, to be honest, it was not of my choosing. It's that the opportunities that are now existing within the financial services or banking value chain there are so less opportunities on the typical traditional banking side, and there are so many on the financial services and technology side that if you really want to advance your career, you can't just stick to the bank.
Yeah, thank you. And Mr. Sunil Paul, if you could please explain how you got into fintech.
So I guess for us, it wasn't an option. So as we evolved as a company, so we dealt with logistics earlier, then with trading, and then started financing the transaction. As we started financing the transaction, I think it was just the need of the hour. I think for many years, we've seen our banks, as Niraj said as well, we compete with some banks in some transactions. So whether it's the onboarding experience or the visibility, transparency, security, risk assessment, any area that you look at it. So we are not a pure play fintech company. We had to adopt fintech as one of the things that we do, just so that one is we could retain the customers and then simplify. So obviously, as Niraj said, I think one aspect is always the cost. But I think just the sheer volume of transactions that we started dealing with, we just couldn't handle it manually. So I think for us, it wasn't an option. We had to get into it in some shape or form. Risk assessment these days, so from a trading live trading, right? So you apply estimate of a client. So if you come for a loan, for example, Akshan, so what I would read about you is essentially what you have done in the past. That's my only way to evaluate you. So those all of the, or how many legal cases are against you, or how many things you have done wrong or right, etc. What's your credit score? Simple things like that. All of that in the current environment is all digitized, right? So I can just pull in that particular API and just attach it to my tool, and I can read that information. Now, given that information was there, I could choose that I could do it manually, which is obviously very expensive. Second is I just invest in a little bit of technology. Of course, little bit is oversimplification. I invest in technology. I get the right people who can do it, because I obviously didn't know how to do it. So we get the right people who can do that. We pull in the right set of information. And in trading, the only two things that are important to you is how you simplify money and how you simplify risk and how you monitor it. So for us to get into fintech was essentially just an evolution for us per se.
Okay, and as you mentioned how it was an evolution, if I were to ask which is your favorite aspect of your job right now, would it not particularly be the tech aspect of it, the financial tech?
The most exciting part today is the tech aspect for sure. We adopted it almost about, say, a year and a half back. So it's been very recent for us in the whole evolution. So we are a 10-year-old company. In that 10 years, it's only been the last year and a half, 2 years that we adopted tech. So we were very late adopters of technology in general. And we obviously regret that thing. So because we could not get it in place much sooner. And some of the tools that Niraj talked about, we actually don't even have that today. Like we don't have data analysis in terms of a fintech platform today, for example. We have data, but we don't use it for either acquisition or as in the new clients per se, or even servicing that client, telling the client their own data. So we don't have that piece, so that will come. So the most exciting part per se is the technology. And I think what all we can do with it, how we are able to service our client much faster. So our payments right now are within a day, for example. A payment that could be as small as $10,000 to as high as a couple of $1 million happens within a day now with the data that we have. So all that and the penetration that we are able to achieve. So for example, I could not reach a client who wanted to trade on a commodity because I needed feet on street to do it. Now we just have a simple app which does that. So if somebody wants to put in a request for 10,000 tons of maize to be traded and financed as a transaction, he can do it on a particular technology app. And these things, we were, as I said, we were late adopters to it. But I think in the current era, the most exciting part in our company's journey is the technology piece today.
Okay, thank you for that. And Mr. Niraj Kaul, what would you say is your favorite aspect of your job right now?
Yeah,
What do you enjoy?
I'll just tell you one thing which I think I've kind of learned, and I think maybe it will be good to good to share with with somebody like you and your friends and schoolmates. Technology itself actually does not do anything. So the thing to understand here is that think of it as a tool that enables your product proposition. So what you have to, rather than thinking about technology, you have to think about what your product requires to get better, right? How can you reach more customer segments? How can you increase your profitability or margin from X to Y? How can you, if there are product extensions that you can do, okay? And maybe I should give you some examples. So, for example, if you're for a bank, if you're a credit card customer, right? What are the other services that the bank can sell through enablement of a technology platform? So sometimes what happens, and this is not that an uncommon mistake, is people spend a lot of money on technology, right, without realizing the end goal of what's the problem that it's trying to solve, or what's the additional benefit that it's going to give me. So to me, I think at the end of the day, technology is a tool for you to enable something, and people who are managing the product or managing the business have to understand what that enablement eventually does, right? So otherwise, what will happen if you don't do that? What happens in a lot of companies, and a lot of smart people make these mistakes, is that you almost buy a white elephant. You spend about millions of dollars, you buy a white elephant, and then you don't realize how to really use it and what it really is doing it. What is it really, what is the problem it's solving? What is it doing for me? So I just wanted to get that out of the way. I mean, the favorite part of my job, I mean, I'm happy if I'm, driving my revenue, because I'm using technology, but I use technology from the business standpoint. So what is it giving me? What is the extra revenue it's giving me? Which extra additional market it has opened to me? How is the customer experience? That is very important, because eventually that is tied to the revenue. How does it improve my customer experience? For example, if it's solving, if the payments used to take 10 days earlier, and now they take a day, that's a huge benefit to the customer, right? Because he's got the cash flow with him now for 9 days that he can utilize. So overall, we are moving into a kind of an experience economy. And if I'm improving the customer experience in any which way, that adds to the, so what gives me joy and happiness is if I'm improving customers' experience in any way. So to me, that personally, and this could change from person to person, but my personal driver is pretty much that.
So would you say like fintech is something that nearly every industry would have to sort of incorporate with, whether it's manufacturing or, as or Sunur also in his kind of industry? So would it be something like gradually every industry and businesses would have to incorporate fintech going ahead?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's, see, what happens in any market, Anu, is that once every market is driven by 3-4 major players, and then there are a plethora of mid-tier players around it, generally, and it's a generic statement. If the leading market participants have raised their technology platform to a certain level, and the market is actually paying a premium because the leaders have invested in that technology platform, the others will just follow. I mean, that's been happening over the last 5,000 years of human history. So the car that I just bought, okay, nobody wanted to move to electric, right? The environmental issues were the same, the climate change problems were the same, the fuel issues were the same, the prices were the same, everything, all the market indicators were the same. It's not that suddenly something happened 4 or 5 years back that has catapulted the electric revolution. The driver has been one company raised the bar of reducing the cost of the battery, which was the major impediment in terms of the overall costing. Once they started doing that and doing a lot of software optimization on the other side, I mean, from BMW to like the blue chip companies are now become followers. From being leaders, they have become followers. It's no different for anybody in the manufacturing or any other financial service sector, because if you I mean, ultimately everything is a business, right? Anu, there's a revenue line that is driven, and there's a cost line, and we can only play with these two lines. And if somebody does so much of innovation that is actually doing cost optimization, right, you go high. Somebody is doing a lot of innovation that enhances revenue, and the revenue optimization, the price premium goes high. So at some level, it's a kind of basic economics, but you're forced now. You're forced. I mean, we are, for example, I'll give you my example. I mean, FI has bought a company called WorldPay about 15 months back, right? It was the largest payment processor in the world at that time. FI is a US company, WorldPay was a British company. So FI has acquired WorldPay. Now, though we acquired WorldPay, our competition right now is from the companies that I had not thought even existed. Because what they've done, and that's one more thing that I think maybe Akshan and everybody else would help understand, is that as you guys kind of mature and look at job opportunities and all that, look at where the bottlenecks are in the industry. What are the what are the challenges and problems that are there already or will happen over the next 5 to 7 years, which need to be solved. That's how jobs get created, because they solve a certain problem that, gone are the days when governments used to create jobs, right? Or different trade unions used to create jobs. There were these artificial, in some way, measures of job creation. But that, that society is kind of over now. In most of the West, it's over in India, in most of Southeast Asia, South Asia, other than few major countries in the world, the job market has totally evolved. So, so whether it's you want to use technology, but you want to use technology for solving real world problems, and that's where your price premium is the highest. I don't know if I've answered your question, Anu, but just push me back if I'm not. Yeah.
No, thank you. Akshan, you want to?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just interested to know, I'm in year 10 currently in the UK. So last year I had to choose my GCSE subjects. I'm not entirely sure about how it works in India, but I've already chosen my subjects, and so I'll be taking them next year in year 11. I've left my options reasonably wide, and I'm happy with the subjects I've taken. So if you were to recommend any subjects to enter the fintech industry, which would you say and why?
I guess the two subjects that Akshan you mentioned, they're right there. I think computer and maths. I think, but apart from that, as I think Niraj said as well, I think it's the solutions that you have to look for. So I have no idea about. Well, I won't say no idea. I have little idea about computers and programming and stuff. But I think what we are working towards is solving something in terms of commodity trade and finance. In the end, I think anything that gets you more analytical and data driven gets you to in some shape or form. It doesn't have to be programming. But I think the two things that you mentioned, computers and maths, I think gets you as close to analytics as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's pretty much I would say as well. It's good that if you're already into computers and mathematics, essentially what typically they do is that they build your problem solving ability, which I think is going to be increasingly at premium as we look at more and more solving more and more complex problems. You see, if it's a very easy problem, generally, not always, yes, but generally people will solve it for less cost, right? But the more complex problems are the ones that would open up a lot of jobs, also would pay much higher, would have more, would have more benefits linked to it. But at the same time, what I would also do, like I would, my niece asked me kind of similar question, and she's in India, and what I told her is that, see, I'm going back a few years now. I'm not going to tell you guys my age, but I'm going to go back a few years. See, when I was growing up, we had actually limited options, right? We were told by, including our own parents, that you have to become a doctor, you have to become an engineer, maybe a lawyer, and if you don't become these three, you might as well just open a small neighborhood shop, of some local sweetmeat, right? But now there are so many career opportunities, so many streams that have built, that I think if you kind of look at your career, you're still you're still very, very young, so you can give yourself the freedom to change your mind. So as fintech is great, right? And we can help and answer any questions from whatever we have learned and experienced. But don't limit yourself, or don't put yourself in a box at this young age that you have to only do this. But I can tell you, yes, in fintechs, these are the opportunities, these are the advantages, this is how it will help. But given your age, I would imagine just keep your kind of options open what you find challenging. Usually people, all successful people in the world are successful not because they are crying every morning saying, oh God, I have to do this work. It's because they enjoy it. They thrive on it. So look at things that you really enjoy, that you really thrive, that challenge you, and you'll do well. This is a bit of a grandfather advice, but I think it's true.
Thank you for that. That was really useful. Moving on to my next question. If you are looking to take on a new recruit, firstly, you can talk to me afterwards. And secondly, I just want to ask, what qualities would you be looking for in them? I think Mr. Neeraj Kaul, you mentioned problem solving. So what other qualities would you be looking for?
Yeah, I would look at attitude. So I would look at okay. Remember one thing, that what is a company, right? Company is nothing but a set of people that have come together to solve a certain problem or to provide a certain benefit or a service that does not exist or does not exist at the same quality. Otherwise, that company it would not exist by and large, right? So generally, a company is a set of people working together. So you have to be able to work with different sort of people, who have views that are very different from yours. And so being a very good team player is I would say is becoming more and more important. These are the 3-4 general skills I would look after, and then there are certain jobs require certain technical skills. So obviously those skills have to be generally ticked. But on paper, I would be happy with these 3 that I mentioned.
Thank you for that. Mr. Snowcall, do you have anything to add? Agree?
No, I think the basic things that Neeraj said, I think they're exactly the same. I think the attitude is obviously key these days for problem solving and hunger for growth. I think that's true for our businesses in terms of client acquisition, but I think not more so for fintech. But I think that hunger I've seen lately that translates also into problem solving, because if you have that hunger to, at least in terms of advancement, not your own, but in terms of moving ahead in the future, I think it's just the hunger for research. It's a hunger for talking to people about what I can solve more in the future as well. Whether it's fintech is also evolving, right? So there is a new thing that comes up every day. So there are some basic things that everybody is doing, whether it's payment, and some people are doing it small scale, some people are doing it large. I was talking to somebody a couple of weeks back. He just had this hunger and understanding about blockchain without having any understanding about blockchain, but he just read so much in about a couple of months. He knew more than what we did over a year. And then just the network he built around him, he just called a few people at IITs and few people at some technology companies in US. But he was a recent college graduate, so a little older than you. But in terms of where we are, it was very critical for us, but we didn't have the same hunger as him. But he just built up so much of net worth around him on this technology, and accumulation of understanding that he became very valuable as a player over a period of time. It's just how much you can absorb and what you can do with that understanding. Just have the right partners around you. I think over a period of time, you'll have mentors anyway. But I think just have that has been key over the recent past.
Thank you for that. One question I have, a very big thing right now is digital banking. So I wanted to ask for your thoughts on digital banking, and what do you think of the sustainability of this career path in relation to traditional banking methods? If Mr. Neil Collins.
Yeah, so anything that can be digitized will be digitized, right? That's the kind of general rule. So so banking is quite easy to be digitized because it's essentially a service, so it can be digitized easily. And therefore, digital banking has taken place. So there are two kinds of digital banking. One is that those traditional banks that have moved from their legacy platform to a more modern platforms and are offering services or digital channels. Then the others are digital only banks. So for example, in UK, you might have heard Monzo or Atom, Revolut, all these guys are digital only banks. You will not see their bank branches and so on. They are kind of post-internet, post-internet babies, so to say. So they've come in the modern, they've been born in a modern economy, and therefore they are, to me, they're fundamentally different. They call themselves banks, but essentially they're technology companies. They're technology companies that do banking. Okay, so the challenge for large banks, just to give you a little bit more flavor on the digital banking, the challenge for large banks' digital operations or their versions of digital banking, vis-a-vis the likes of Atom or Monzo or Revolut and N26, and there are many more, is that the large banks have a backlog. They have huge technology platforms that you cannot transform, you cannot change, you cannot modernize very easily. You need a lot of money, you need a lot of capital, and you need a lot of resources and time to make that transition. So one is the technological transition. The other is also a cultural transition. These banks have employees that have been there, have been working through for 10, 20, 25 years. So they are set in their ways. It's very difficult to change them culturally, right? Whereas if you go to a small startup or even Revolut, the average age is much younger. So I'll give you an example. We had a Zoom call with Amazon, and I was surprised that their CTO, their chief technology officer, it was like he was not even 40, whereas most bank CTOs are like 55, right? And if you saw an application written in let's say COBOL, the languages that were used when we were kind of studying, I mean, they've never seen C of COBOL. For them, it's all Java and the more modern languages. So there are two challenges essentially for digital banks which come out of established large corporations versus new. So one is technological and the other is challenging. I mean, technological, I think eventually they will solve over a period of time. But to me, like cultural issue is a bit more difficult to solve because you can't put the organization upside down. But digital banking is what I would urge you is that if you have an account in a digital bank, you should look at what services and features that are that are there. You should look at what is the customer engagement. If you have a query and you submit a query through the digital channel, is it better responded vis-a-vis non-digital channel? In my view, it is. And now, along with the digital channel, there's another thing that is coming is the handshake between digital channels and social media. So I'll give you an example. We had gone to a trip to Italy, and we lost one piece of luggage. We couldn't find it, and we wrote to British Airways that we didn't find it. We didn't even get a response. So we wrote them two emails. You could say emails kind of part digital, two emails, no response. Then second email got just an acknowledgement. Yeah, we look for it, we'll do something. Then we put it on British Airways Twitter account. We got a response within 1 hour, and the problem was solved within 24 hours. And the reason was everybody can see Twitter, right? So British Airways is aware that if they get a bad feedback on Twitter, everybody can see it, and therefore they have to prioritize it. Whereas if we have sent one-to-one email to them, nobody knows. So that's how it's changing. But but it's very, very interesting, very interesting right now.
Thank you, Mr. Sunur. So what are your thoughts on digital banking?
So I think the only thing I'll add is very simple. I think so whether it's digital banking, neo banking, I think there are different things. And recently I saw a startup which is only focused on credit card for teens, which is linked to the adult member of the families as well. All of these startups which I've seen around, whether it's in India or across the globe, have been the basic question is why? Like, why do you need a physical branch, right? Why do you need only credit card for adults? Why is cash important? Why do you need cash transaction? I guess some part of our culture from, I guess, my generation has been like, we were always too careful to ask the question why. And I think the most valuable question these days, whether it's from new graduates or people younger than me, I think the most value today, the biggest brand is the question why. I think you have to question everything around you and then absorb what responses you get and see what value you can create from that. I think all of these neo banking or neo cards and stuff like that have generated from a basic question, why is it needed? And I think within our company as well, the people who are driving tech for us or elsewhere or other functions as well, the most value is created by, they just ask, so you have been doing this for 10 years. Why do you have to do this? Why can't we do it this way? So just, I think, keep asking and keep reading around it. I think that's the most valuable thing. I think whether it's digital, neo, or the next generation banking, which may come up in the next 5 years, neo banking could become obsolete by that time. The way crypto is picking up, I think you may not need neo banking at that point as well. It could be without any cash, because neo banking still relies on cash, right? So crypto doesn't. So just keep asking, why do you need neo? Why can't it just be crypto banking? And I think you'll start to see answers much faster than what Anu, Nirad, or I can evaluate. I think what will take us a year to figure out, I think just by asking that question, you'll probably figure out within a few weeks. So
Yeah,
that's the only thing I would add. Yeah,
that's a fantastic input. And I don't think it needs any addition. But the you see, remember that the kind of exposure that the kids have these days in terms of digital technology, social media. And I think what it's doing is that you're able to see the best of breed very quickly than we were able to see, because we kind of I was, my kind of let's say college or early part of was non-digital years. It was we were only exposed to the best that was within our realm. While as in your cases, I mean, if somebody is doing great work in South Africa in a particular area, it's visible to you right now. So the learning opportunities, and therefore what that does is that accelerates the pace of innovation. I think that's one major kind of differentiator. That's why you will see the pace of innovation getting faster and faster. And the reason it's getting faster and faster is not some magic. It's just that you are exposed to so much quality. If you go looking for it, that you will have to innovate. You will have to bring new. Innovate means what you were saying, that you have to ask the question, why should we do like this, right? And it opens up, I mean, incredibly, it opens up new market segments that were not even visible before. So so fantastic input. Yeah, I mean, keep asking why.
Yes. Thank you for
Even to your school teacher, just say why. Just irritate the hell out of them.
Yeah, in fact, I think I tried once. I didn't get very far. I got as far as his office. So,
But I think
don't give up.
best way to look at it, I think people laughed at Elon Musk in 2008. I don't think anybody's laughing today. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for both of those. I mean,
sorry.
quick,
Sorry,
quick final question.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, a quick final question. So I think, Mr. Snowcall, you mentioned cryptocurrencies, and of course, that's a very current aspect of fintech right now. So I just wonder, what actual jobs are there in the line of cryptocurrency? And do you think there'll ever be a time when these jobs are amongst some of the safest and most desired in the whole of the fintech industry?
So I'll tell you my understanding of crypto, which is only a few months old. So there is a layer of crypto that exists, which is essentially seamless transaction. Now, what people have done is, and you should check out a few companies which are in US. There are companies like Hedera and stuff, which are building layers on that crypto transactions to make easy for some of the legacy companies to use crypto, which is that easy to use. I think the only challenge that we are dealing with crypto, and that's the reason we haven't adopted that in commodities trading. Otherwise, if you think about it, Niraj sitting there or Anu sitting in UK could trade on or finance maize or castor oil or any commodity in India through the use of blockchain, right? Today they cannot because there are regulations in India and foreign investors can't do it right away. But in the crypto world, nobody would know. The basic challenge is the KYCs. It's probably a wrong example. A wrong element, like a terrorist sitting in some country could buy a commodity sitting in India, and I won't know because in crypto or blockchain, and I'll say with a disclaimer, this is just my basic understanding of crypto in general. KYCs are not required, and there is no way you can do the KYC for the last element who owns that particular piece of asset. I think in terms of your question, the jobs available are essentially the number of layers you can build out crypto is in terms of how you can use that crypto technology. The crypto exchanges are the best ones as of now. I think the most valued companies are those. And in India, I know those companies. I don't know the companies of crypto exchanges in UK as of now. But crypto exchanges are the biggest one because that's the exchange of that particular currency. That I think is the biggest problem today. How do you exchange that currency for something else? Third is just the deployment. I think people are struggling, people of my age or even slightly junior, I think there's a struggling in terms of how do I control this animal, right? Which is out there in terms of it can do so many things, but I just don't have control over it. And I think the regulators are struggling. And I think as soon as the regulators figure out how to control this thing, and the day they figure it out, I think most of the companies which are into crypto and people who are even touching crypto, they'll be very, very highly valued companies. But till that point, it's a risk, both in terms of regulation, leakages, everything else. If you're looking at crypto, I would just say start reading about it and ask people who are in the crypto universe before you take your first step into that world. It can be very rewarding. It can hurt as well. So it's an unknown universe still. I think investors are also figuring out. There are these big funds like Sequoia who are also investing heavily into it, but I think they're also figuring out as to whether it has value, whether regulators will adopt it, and whether it can apply to anything from payments, what Niraj is doing, or commodities, what we are doing. So, but I think people are employed in crypto across the globe today. As I spoke to a company called Hedera in US. They're building layers on layers, which is amazing. And that they're not the only ones. I think there are multiple companies doing it. I thought crypto was very, very basic in terms of transactions only. But you'll be amazed what crypto is doing today just by building sub levels. And I think just to read more, I think interview people who are into crypto exchanges and crypto transactions. and they can tell you they see the world very differently. According to them, crypto is the only world out there. That's when I talk to them, they don't see cash as the future. They see crypto as the future. Uh, I still live in a very conservative world. So for me, crypto is a different place to be in. It's a different ecosystem. Or in today's language, it's a different multiverse out there. But yeah, crypto, I think you just have to find out more, and I may not be the right person for it, but the opportunities are, I think they're already out there.
Yes, thank you for that. And Mr. Nirkol, quickly, if you could please answer the question as well. I'm just
Yeah, I think Sunir already kind of touched. I would say on crypto, see, in terms of technology, it's a solved problem, at least in my view. So when I say solved problem, I mean the technology is robust enough. So most of the, is on blockchain technology, essentially, where you cannot manipulate the transaction, which is the basic fundamental philosophy on which payment kind of exists. So if you can authenticate each participant in a payment flow, and you can handshake without manipulation the actual payment data, and you can solve it in a decentralized way across the globe. That is a huge problem that actually blockchain has solved. My only what I would say on crypto, and again, I'm not a crypto expert, but what I would say is that kind of wait and watch. You read a lot. If you want to read some blogs, I can share something with you that I think might be a good kind of entry point to it. There are still fundamental challenges with kind of crypto becoming mass market. One, obviously, like he already mentioned, is the regulatory one. See, money has always been regulated, right? Because money, what is money at the end of the day? Money is the value of exchange to a particular good or commodity that is built by a society or a country, right? That's what money is. And money has always been centralized, right, through governments or central banks and so on. So what blockchain and crypto are doing, they're kind of challenging all this monopoly, and therefore they have. In my view, unless there is some kind of a handshake between eventually the government and the banks on how to deal with crypto, it's still going to be kind of under the radar, like it is largely today. I mean, it is getting somewhat mainstream, but there are only some elements of the whole crypto chain that are going mainstream. Not the I mean, countries are still banning. There are laws against dealing with cryptocurrencies in most countries. So I would say that the second issue with a lot of this technology is the kind of energy use that it uses. So most of these, if you've heard of Bitcoin and so on, the amount of energy that is being used to mine is you cannot scale based on that kind of energy use. So there has to be also some kind of a technological advancement where this problem is solved, so that this thing can be scaled well. So I think it still kind of has two issues, but there is a lot of progress. There are newer and newer companies that are coming into the space and are claiming to solve some of these problems. I'm not very close to this. I mean, we are from FIS WorldPay standpoint, we have a tie-up with few crypto companies, and we do our technology platforms do process some of the crypto to fiat and vice versa conversions as well. We issue cards which can be denominated in some cryptocurrency. So we've kind of taken some steps. But I think to me, like, if it has to be a mass market adoption, like how Visa and MasterCard are accepted throughout the world, then there has to, those two problems that I mentioned earlier have to be solved. And I think, at some point, but so keep your options open, read a lot, and I can send you some links or blogs, or if you are really interested in crypto, and you can just get onto the train.
Okay, thank you. I think not only from me, but from all of our viewers, to you, Mr. Sunur Kaul, and you, Mr. Nirad Kaul. We managed to cover a lot of topics in this 1 hour, including what you do and how we can start kickstarting the career now, and also a few different streams within the huge industry of fintech. So I feel like I learned a massive amount, and I wish I could just sit here all day, as I have so many more questions. But I chose what I thought were my best questions, and I hope you enjoyed them too. So thank you for today.
We enjoyed. So firstly, thank you to you and Anu especially as well for organizing this. I mean, this shows the the positive attitude that we were talking about in terms of hiring, and it shows the enthusiasm that you have towards the industry, towards what you want to do, towards what is happening in the industry. So just keep it going, keep knocking the doors, keep learning, keep your options open, and you'll do very well, and you'll enjoy.
Thank you.
I would just like to say thank you to Sunur and Nirad, obviously, and Akshad for joining in today. I mean, I've also, while I was listening to everyone, I was thinking like basically what you were also saying, that we have to watch how the technology is evolving and how the cultural shift is happening in globally everywhere, because everything sort of with the digital thing, it's all getting all global, and you can be anywhere. As Sunur said, he can be, the transactions can happen in a day. So that's interesting to obviously understand how things work. And the key things that you mentioned, obviously the right attitude and the hunger for advancement is something that I found was very useful, which the young children have to be interested in, deciding on what they want to do and how they want to progress, especially the technology world. So thank you. I like the why, keep asking why. I often say, ask why, and then also think how, so you're asking why and then think, how do I do it? How do I improve? So thank you very much for today. Sunur for joining from India, and thank you, Nirad, for joining as well. Thank you, Akshan, for today's
Thank you, Anu. Thank you very much. Thank you, Akshan.
Thank you very much. Great to meet you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.